Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Album versus Album. Today, as you can see behind me, it's the battle you've all been waiting for. Slayer versus Slayer. Which Slayer will come out on top? I didn't mean to be that gross, folks, or did I? Today we're going to be talking about two classic thrash metal albums from one of the big four of thrash, fucking Slayer. Slayer! I could have done it louder, but there's other people in the house. Rain and Blood versus Seasons in the Abyss. Now, some of you might be asking, and have asked, why did I choose these two albums in particular? Clearly, I'm going to talk about Rain and Blood because it's a fucking classic and it's almost universally loved. But why did I choose Seasons in the Abyss? Well, it all comes down to two things. Number one, I actually see a lot of people cite Seasons in the Abyss as their favorite Slayer album. And of course, many people cite Rain and Blood as their favorite Slayer album. All of the other ones I don't see pop up quite as much. Plus, number two, these are my two favorite Slayer albums. If you listen to my podcast, Cranked and Ranked, which you should be if you're not, we did 2 episodes counting down all of the Slayer albums from our least favorite to our most favorite, and these were the two that were on top for me. I'm not going to tell you which one was number one. You're going to have to go fucking listen to the podcast, motherfuckers. I'm sorry, that was rude. You guys are beautiful. So anyway, let's just jump right into this. So for those of you who are coming to this for the first time, this is a thing where, sure, we're picking 2 albums and we're going to talk about them, but you all out there have helped me figure out who's going to win. I put a poll up on YouTube in the community type section. I also did one on Instagram and I did one on Twitter, and I figured out how to do them again on Facebook. So hallelujah. So I put those up for 24 hours and I let everyone vote between these 2 albums, and then I tally up all the votes plus 1 for me. I mean, it's only fair. And we see who comes out on top. But before we do that, let's just break down each album. Let's start with this one. Rain and Blood came out in 1986, produced by Mr. Rick Rubin, and it is a fucking classic. There's no denying it. There's no denying the massive influence that this album has had over not just thrash metal, but metal in general. Extreme metal, death metal, you fucking name it. There are bands that cite this album as an influence everywhere you fucking look. And it's fucking enjoyable as hell. It's basically a 30-minute burst of aggression and speed and no nonsense, no bullshit thrash metal, and I fucking love it. It's an amazing album. So this time I asked for some of you to leave some comments after you voted, and I picked kind of the more interesting ones, or the ones where it didn't just say the name of an album, to sort of add some scope to this whole thing. So let's look at the comments we got for Rain and Blood. First up from Father Mucker, he says, has to be Rain and Blood because it was pretty groundbreaking at the time. I would agree with that. I don't think necessarily the idea of a fast thrash metal album was groundbreaking, but the presentation of it all, it really did seem like something that hadn't been done before, and now it's done a lot. Next, we have a comment from Jimmy Page. Does Robert Plant know that you're commenting on my videos? He may not like that. It says, I'm sorry, that was I'm not the first person to make that kind of joke. He says, I'm team Rain and Blood. It's just something I rather listen to again and again. It never gets old. Seasons is great, don't get me wrong. It just isn't something you can't get enough of. I'd kind of agree with that, because Rain and Blood is an album that it ends and you kind of just want to start it all over again. I guess that's good. It's short, so you can listen to it 2 times in an hour. So yeah. So the next comment we have is from Gary Sanderson, and he says, Seasons has stronger songs overall, but Rain is so iconic. a speed blast of savagery, whereas Seasons has more memorable structured songs. That seems like a half and half comment, but I'm going to go ahead and put that on the Rain and Blood side because that is all of the meaty comments we got for Rain and Blood. That was it. A lot of the other ones either just said Rain and Blood or they said Slayer! So there you go. Rain and Blood. Let's move on to the next album in our battle, Seasons in the Abyss. Came out in 1990, produced by Rick Rubin, mostly by Andy Wallace, who I think Andy Wallace was actually an engineer on Rain and Blood, but he kind of stepped in a bigger role for this album. And I think the sound is greatly improved on this, but not only that, it's not the same kind of album as Rain and Blood. This is an album that is varied in the kinds of songs that are on there. The song structures are a little bit more meaty. They're slower tempos. Tom Araya does a little bit of singing-ish kind of stuff on it. But overall, it is just a really strong album. There's not a fucking dull moment on this album. It does last a little bit longer than Rain and Blood, but it's another fucking stone cold classic. And I would think almost as influential as Rain and Blood, just maybe in a different kind of way to maybe different kinds of bands. So let's move over to the comments. First up from Ilya Pavlchenko, or something like that. Why is Seasons in the Abyss better? Easy. It's 14 minutes longer than Rain and Blood, so it's more Slayer. Good point. The production is better. Andy Wallace is a full-time producer on Seasons. The songs are better. And that mid-song drum break in War Ensemble rules. You were fucking right there. It really does give you a little bit more Slayer than Rain and Blood does. Rain and Blood's it's got one vibe. This has many vibes. So it's a great comment. Moving on. Next comment is from Integrity 101. Seasons has the best elements of Rain combined with South of Heaven. It's the best Slayer album. That's a good point, because after Rain and Blood, Slayer released South of Heaven, which had a lot of the slower tempo and introduced the melodic vocals ish from Tom Araya. And this album really did kind of just smooth it out and say, hey, we're going to take the best of all of the things that we do and throw them on to an album here. And then you get Seasons in the Abyss. Next comment is from Josh Allen. Rain and Blood had Slayer's best song, Angel of Death, and their second best song, Raining Blood. Everything in between those two songs was way inferior. Seasons in the Abyss was a solid album from beginning to end and gets my vote. Did you forget about a little song called Jesus Saves? There's a lot more going on. I appreciate your comment, but there's a lot more going on Rain and Blood than just the two songs. I mean, Necrophobic alone. Woo! Okay, sorry. Next up, we have a comment from Brian Duraz. I think I'm saying that correctly. I think I have to go with Seasons. As groundbreaking as Rain and Blood is, Seasons is a little better produced and technically more sound. Seasons is the album where you can really hear the talent and the direction the band is going. I love it. I love it too. Next comment is from Adam Goldsmith. As a drummer, the parts on Seasons Lombardo played are far more interesting to me, and as much as I love full-on relentless thrash, you just can't, for me, beat a mix of thrash and groove. I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a strong point of this particular album. It does have the groove, which can be just as fucking heavy as the really fast, thrashy stuff if you're doing it right. All right, last comment is from Shareth Shanks. I guess for me, it's Seasons. For me, it was like Slayer had reached maturity. They showed that their aggression could also have groove and not just speed. It's an all-round thrasher album. Slayer! Once again, I'll let you guys do it for me. All right, now we've come to the point where we got to pick a winner. So let's look at the votes. So over on Instagram, Rain and Blood won with 65% of the vote. That was 77 votes for Rain and Blood and 42 votes for Seasons in the Abyss. Over on Twitter, Rain and Blood wins with 75% of the vote. That was 12 votes for Rain and Blood and 4 votes for Seasons in the Abyss. More people need to come follow me on fucking Twitter. Why am I even there? Anyway, Facebook. On Facebook, Rain and Blood wins with 60% of the vote, a little bit closer there, with Rain and Blood getting 59 votes and Seasons getting 39 votes. And then finally, right here on the YouTubes, Rain and Blood wins with 55%, even closer, with Rain and Blood getting 85 votes and Seasons getting 70 votes. All right, so before I tally up the votes, I'm going to give you my pick. My pick is Rain and Blood, simply because as an album, as a Slayer album, as a thrash metal album, as a metal album, as a fucking album in history, out of all the Slayer albums, if you're going to write a book or teach a class on thrash metal and include a chapter on Slayer and you could only include one album, which one would you choose? I think you would probably go with that one. It's the most iconic. It has the most influence that you can see in all of the metal world. And it's just one of those things that out of all of the music that I talk about, this seems like one of those albums that is almost universally loved. I don't hear very many people talk shit about Rain and Blood. If they do, they're just not a Slayer fan or a thrash metal fan. And then fuck those people, right? Anyway, so that's my vote. So it ends up being a total of 234 votes for Rain and Blood and 155 votes for Seasons in the Abyss. Isn't that funny? Because judging on the amount of comments we got for Seasons in the Abyss, you would think that this would be the big winner. But I guess who really won over here? It's just the dudes yelling, Slayer! And so congrats to you guys, and congrats to Rain and Blood, the winner of this edition of Album versus Album. So there you go. Slayer, album versus album. I hope you all enjoyed it. You know we're going to get to others in the Big Four and other thrash metal bands. But I would like to change things up a little bit. So if you have any ideas you want to post down below of 2 albums from one band that might be interesting to battle it out, just go ahead and put them down below. And once again, thank you all very much for watching. If you want to join in next time, go follow me on Facebook at Old Head Podcast, on Twitter at Old Head Podcast, on Instagram at oldhead.tx. And if you're not subscribed here, please subscribe. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys again very soon. Slayer!